Welcome. This is David Boles, Human Meme. Today's topic, the anchor of cultural appropriation. When I was but a wee tiny child growing up in Nebraska, we would play Cowboys and Indians after school and on weekends. The kids who had the toy guns were the cowboys. The poor kids who didn't have any toy weapons were always the Indians. Plus, the Indians had to take off their shirts to show their red skin, even in the dead of winter. And my human meme friend, the Indians always lost, the cowboys always won the day, and they won with spite and might, and never a good sense of mercy or moral decency. And now, 40 years later, I realize that playing Cowboys and Indians as Midwestern white children, as we all were, would now most likely be seen as insensitive and inappropriate. Because today, white kids pretending to be Indians is culturally inappropriate. Cultural appropriation. And that's actually an interesting concept to consider. Cultural appropriation means you take the bits of a culture that does not belong to you, and you appoint those selective cultural totems for your own use. Some say dreadlock hair is a cultural appropriation when people with naturally straight hair try to take on that look. And there was a woman, a white woman, a while back, in the news, who claimed she was black, identified as black, and she wore dreads. And this woman was excoriated in the press for faking her cultural identity, for pretending to be black while living white. And this woman was a demonstration, some believe, of cultural appropriation. But she really believed she was black. And her certainty of that fact sort of changed the conversation a bit. Is being black blood, skin color, or a deep sense of spiritual connection to the people of that culture? Now, back then, dressing up as an Indian, when you were not one, to be killed by kids who were not cowboys, but who pretended to be cowboys, is cultural appropriation. And now what about Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren's revelation DNA test of her being 512th bit of Indian, something like that. Is that enough Indian blood to protect her from accusations of cultural appropriation? Accusations as she tries to claim that Indian heritage. Well, that's a tough answer, too. Tougher to swallow and then gag on a truth that does not help you. And now we arrive at Megyn Kelly, who was fired from the Today Show for claiming that white children could and should dress up in blackface for Halloween. And they should dress in blackface without any repercussion because, well, the kids are just playing around. And Megyn Kelly, formerly of Fox News, was corrected by her audience and her bosses and her friends and the children, and she learned the really hard way. You cannot lie to salve a truth. Megyn Kelly wasn't so much fired because of cultural appropriation. She was fired more for being fact insensitive in correction. Any white person in blackface is no longer acceptable. It used to be a form of entertainment back in the 20s and the 30s. Now blackface, we've grown to know, is just terrible and racist. We grow, we learn, we remember. Now things begin to change a little bit when you move into the entertainment world. Beyond the Megyn Kelly fake news cycle, where people are paid to be what they are not. And what about the famous Broadway play? The musical, Hamilton. Is that cultural appropriation? Or is it just a fancy reimagining of what happened in history? The movie The Shape of Water. Is it cultural appropriation to have a non-deaf, non-mute actress pretend to be a character who does not speak and who uses some sign language to communicate? There's also an old, mean, fat guy in the Midwest who claims now to be part of an Indian tribe. He has all the feathers and all the bows, and he even has a traditional nickname. And he has said that when he dies, not now, but when he dies, the land he owns, the land he lives on, will be given back to the local tribe. And my human meme friend, I argue with you today that if you know now the land in which you sleep upon does not belong to you, well, you are morally required to give it back right now, not later. You cannot wait until you die to do the right thing and hope to be called a hero and a nice guy. Justice delayed is justice denied. Cultural appropriation. And some fashion designers have been accused of cultural appropriation, stealing this look from ancient Egypt and that look from modern Mexico, and some find that insulting to the originating people. Well, art has many inspirations. And art is always unbound by culture and unraveled by imagination. And I really wonder where the line is appropriately drawn between inspiration and insult. The world is always changing, growing, congealing, compressing, coming together, ripping apart. Cultures arrive and die in the blink of an amber eye. We want to celebrate our culture. But does that mean we cannot share it with other people? St. Patrick's Day is probably the pinup for this story, for cultural appropriation. Because I don't think the Irish really care too much about that. If you celebrate St. Patrick's Day, then you're Irish. For at least a day. Cultural appropriation is a way of separating people from each other, and of making the accusation more powerful than the deed. One need not steal or borrow something to make it their own. We should celebrate the delights of every culture, and respect all totems and all memes. And we should give each cultural notion a new beginning and a new life in the light of every eye. Thank you for listening. Be a human meme.